Today on In Your Face Anatomy, we are talking and learning the muscles of the forearm. The forearm. That's what I meant. The muscles of the forearm. All right, let's get into it. All right, muscles of the forearm. Again, this is the arm. This is your forearm. So this is what we're really going to focus on today. So to start out, first thing we've got is brachioradialis. So with brachioradialis, just so you can kind of get some idea, some perspective here, it's this muscle here. It's really one of the biggest muscles of my forearm. Cuts right across that radius. So we know where the radial bone is going to be. So this is brachioradialis. Now take a second and remember this muscle, especially if you're looking at a model right now. This is brachioradialis. This one's going to be important because we're going to use this as our starting point, and then we're going to move all the way around the arm in a big circle as we learn this stuff. So before I go any further, I just want to be clear about a couple of things. Something we have to remember. If these muscles contract up here, what that's going to do is that's going to pull my hand backwards. So this is extension. That is the motion of extension. These are my extensor muscles. Same thing over here. If these muscles contract, then that's going to pull my hand up. That motion is flexion. So these are my flexors. This side of the bone on the thumb, this is my radial side. This is my ulnar side. So extensors, radial, flexors, ulnar. Extensors, radial, ulnar, flexors. Okay, remember that, and that helps with the muscles of the forearm a little bit here. So going back to it, I'm starting off with brachioradialis. Boom. Next to brachioradialis, I've got extensor carpi radialis longus. So this is on the extensor side of my forearm, I can see, and it extends down to the carpal bones, crossing over the radius, extensor carpi radialis longus. Next to it is another muscle with a big name, but I think it's one of the easiest ones to find. It's this one here. This one, this little one, this is extensor carpi radialis brevis. And I remember this one because I think we only see this briefly. I think briefly that gets me to brevis. This is extensor carpi radialis brevis. All right. Next to that, we've got extensor digitorum. We can see how this muscle comes down and extends all the way down into our hand, into the digits of our hand. It's going to pull our digits back. This is extensor digitorum. Right next to it, we have this little tiny skinny muscle right here. This is extensor digiti minimi because it's going to extend down and go to the pinky. Remember, minimi means your pinky. So when this muscle contracts, that extends my pinky back. You know, like when you're drinking out of a teacup, you hold that pinky up. That is this muscle doing that. Extensor digiti minimi. Extensor digitorum, pretty broad muscle. Next to it, extensor digiti minimi. And then as I move to the elbow, I move into my cubitalis muscles. So remember, the cubital region is our elbow. So this is cubitalis posterior here. And next to it is cubitalis reolani. Cubitalis reolani. Cubitalis posterior, cubitalis reolani. So in hindsight, starting over, I'm all the way back. There's my crook of my elbow, big muscle, the biggest one, brachioradialis. Extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, because we can just see it briefly. Extensor digitorum, extensor digiti minimi, cubitalis posterior, cubitalis reolani. So start at brachioradialis and make your way all the way around until you get to cubitalis reolani, and just do it repetitively. Keep doing it and doing it and do it until it makes sense and all these pieces start to fall into place. Now on the other side, on the inside of my arm, now I'm on the flexor side. First thing I've got is pronator teres. And you can see how this muscle kind of cuts in at an angle that when it contracts, what that's going to do is flip my hand over. That is the motion of pronation. So this is pronation teres. Next to it, I've got flexor, because we're on the flexor side, flexor carpi radialis. Flexor carpi, because it goes down to the carpal bones, and we're on the radial side where the radius is. flexor carpi radialis. Next to it, this one going right down the middle of the my forearm on the inside, this is palmaris longus. Palmaris longus because it goes down to the palm. And there's a little hack with palmaris longus. We can see that little tendon that sticks up there. It extends a little bit longer than everything else. That is palmaris longus. That's the tendon of palmaris longus. So we can see it is indeed a little bit longer. Palmaris longus. Next to it, I've got radial carpi ulnaris. Again, flexor carpi ulnaris. That's what I meant to say. Flexor carpi ulnaris because we're on the flexor side. We're going down to the carpal bones, and there's my ulnar bone sticking out right there. We can see a little piece of it. So again, pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, flexor carpi ulnaris. All right, so if we look at some of the deeper muscles, so I'm going to pull off these guys here, and that's going to get me to a couple of muscles here. One, I've got just this little piece of muscle sticking up here. When I've taken off this piece here, boom. Taking off pronator teres of my flexors, boom. This little piece of muscle that's been cut so we can see the deeper ones. This is flexor digitorum superficialis because it is more superficial than its partner, which is this deeper muscle underneath it. This is flexor digitorum profundus. So flexor digitorum superficialis, flexor digitorum profundus. Then on this side, over on the thumb side here, because this muscle is going to go down to my thumb. You see the thumb there? This muscle here, this is flexor pollicis longus. Flexor pollicis longus. So pollicis just means your thumb, and we can see how this muscle extends down to the thumb. Flexor pollicis longus. This muscle right here. So again, flexor digitorum, because we're on the flexor side. So all these are flexors. Flexor digitorum superficialis, flexor digitorum profundus, flexor pollicis longus. All right, so I'm going to put my forearm back together here on the inside, and we're going to skip over and take off the other stuff. So now I'm back to the extensor surface. I'm going to pull these muscles off as well and get to the deeper muscles that are underneath. There's only a couple here that we're really concerned with. So first off, I've still got pronator teres. So there's my pronator teres coming in at an angle from the inside of my forearm, kind of opposite that. If I move back over to the extensor surface, so my pronator teres fibers are running this way. This muscle, the fibers are running this way. So this muscle here, this is supinator. Supinators, because when it contracts, that's going to flip my hand palm up. So supinator, pronator teres here, supinator, kind of working against each other. And then I've got abductor pollicis longus. There we go. So supinator comes in here, boom. This muscle that cuts all the way across, you can see it's going to end up going all the way down to my thumb. So when this muscle contracts, that's going to cause my thumb to abduct out. That's what it's going to do. That muscle right here is going to pull my thumb outward. This is abductor, because that's the motion. Pollicis, because it goes to the thumb. Longus. Abductor pollicis longus. And that's it as far as my deep muscles go. At least for this side, pronator teres, abductor, supinator. Supinator is the one we care about. Abductor pollicis longus. All right, so let me put my forearm back together for a second here. And just a couple more to go. All right. The retinaculum, that's how we say it, retinaculum, that is like this little watch band. And what it does is it helps lock down all of these tendons from these muscles, helps hold everything in place. On the extensor side, this is my extensor retinaculum. On the other side, this is my flexor retinaculum in here. Just helping lock everything down. Extensor retinaculum, flexor retinaculum. Then I've got my lumbricals. So these are a little bit more subtle with my lumbricals. They are muscles that run along my metatarsal bone. So we can really only see one, and it's going to be right in here, this muscle skinny little muscle right along the side of this metatarsal bone. This is my lumbrical right in there. Then I've got abductor digiti minimi, so the muscle that's going to pull my pinky out. So if I look at my hand, that muscle to make that happen is going to be on this side. So when this contracts, my pinky goes whoop. So this is abductor digiti minimi. Then I've got opponent's pollicis that's going to run along the outside of my thumb here. Opponent's pollicis. And it looks like that's it for the hand. I hope I didn't miss anything. But either way, good luck.